Alright, so today we're going to work on pipetting. You may think, oh, that's easy, but there's actually a lot of skill involved, and so it takes time and it takes practice. So first off, these are your research pipettes. What you see is a whole carousel of them, and essentially we have 3 different research pipettes. We have 2 yellow and 1 blue, and if you'll notice, there are pipette tips that match. So if they are yellow, they go with the yellow tip. If they are blue, they go with the blue tip. What's really wonderful about these is you just spin and you tell it how many microliters you want to pipette, and that is what it will pipette if you use them correctly. Alright, so what do I mean by that? So let's say we need to pipette 500 microliters. You would just spin this little knob until it shows up as 500 microliters on there. Then you always need to check and make sure that that number is within the range on the top, because even though this will roll all the way down to like 51, etc., these are not accurate at that level. Meaning this says 1 to 1,000 microliters, it's accurate. So at 500, it's in that range. But you have to be in that range or else it's not going to be accurate. So that means if you need to pipette 10 microliters, you might think you could grab this one because it'll do from 20 to 200, but in actuality you need to do this one. It goes from 2 to 20 microliters. What this also means is if you need to pipette a microliter and a half, you're not using the right pipette, because none of these will do a microliter. Even though they all will go down to a microliter, they're not accurate for a microliter. Alright, so now that we kind of covered that, here are the main things to know about a pipette. First, when you put your research tip on, you want to stick it into the box and just firmly press down. You don't ever take a tip on and off with your hands. There is a nice fancy lever right here. So you want to use that lever just to eject it. Now you might think, oh, I could just put it back on like this, but that runs the risk of twisting the end of the pipette, which could lead to us needing to calibrate these a whole lot sooner. So don't do that. So either stick it down in it and then use that to pop it off. Okay? Don't pull it off, pop it off. Then, when you're actually pipetting liquid, you have to try to be as up and down as you can when you're pipetting, not left to right, not forward and backward, and that's a lot harder than you would think. So when you're sticking it in, stick it in straight up and down as you can, and then pull it up. But how did I pull that liquid up? So there are 2 stops. So when you're pressing this tip at the top, the button at the top, you'll push down, you'll notice it kind of wants to stop there, and then it kind of also wants to stop there. So it has 2 stops. So when you're doing pipetting, you have a choice of how do you want to do it. You have to use each stop at some point. It just depends on what you want to do. I typically will go to the first stop, stick it into my liquid, pull the liquid up, and then whenever I'm pipetting it out, I'll go to the second stop. But you can also do the opposite, where I go to the second stop, pull up my liquid, and then I go to my other vehicle, the vessel that I'm putting it in, and go to the first stop. And you'll notice if you do it that way, you still have some liquid remaining, and that would just go into a waste container. Okay, so there are 2 ways to do it, but just kind of get the feel of it, and whichever one you prefer, go for it. Typically, this going to the second stop and then releasing it at the first is for really viscous liquids, so keep that in mind, but practice going back and forth. Now also, in addition to being straight up and down, something that you'll want to do is called pre-wetting. So with pre-wetting, you stick it in there and you pull some up and then you eject it. And you do that a couple times where you're pulling liquid up and ejecting it, and what that does is it coats the inner surface of your pipette tip with your liquid. So now when you pull your substance up, it's already been coated and you're pulling up the accurate volume. In addition to that, you have to think about the surface depth. So when you're putting it into your liquid, there's actually charts that tell you how far you're supposed to penetrate the surface, and you want to just go pretty accurate. As long as you're kind of accurate and you get it immersed, that's the main thing. You'll notice quickly that you pulled up air bubbles if you didn't get it in depth far enough, or if you go all the way down, you could end up just changing the amount of volume that gets pulled up. So try and be consistent, and then try to keep that forward back motion straight up and down as possible. And so those are my main tips. Good luck pipetting.